Yep.
Awesome. Okay, cool. You on the stage?
Yep.
Right, well, hi everyone, I'm Will,
And I'm Amy.
and we make up the Silver Events developer team. So what we do is we make the mods that are behind the Speed Silver events. These are these multi-day long modded multiplayer events. We get dozens of players on, and they get recorded, and then these things end up becoming videos with sometimes tens of millions of views. And we've been doing this for a while now, and we want to share some things that we've learned while doing this.
Yep. Okay. So probably the most important thing with anything to do with making mods in general is just using Git. Because the ability to just have your full version control and to be able to share your code between the whole team is just invaluable. If you don't use Git, it's basically impossible to get an actual mod completed. As you know, anytime you make an issue, you can, yeah, anytime you cause a problem with your code, you can just revert back to the version that was working. Of course, when you have like multiple people on a team, one or two, however many, it also allows you to, sync up your code between everyone without causing obscene amounts of problems, which is pretty common whenever you first start out trying to do group projects. Like if you're in college or anything, you'll probably know you're not using Git and you're uploading to OneDrive or something. Probably not a good thing. Any kind of version control is probably good, but Git is probably the most accessible and easy to use. You can also make things a bit easier if you're working in a team by using commit messages, which are actually valuable. You could just spam your commit messages with random letters and garbage, but that doesn't really tell you anything. You can barely browse through them. So giving proper messages, we use something called conventional commits to just kind of give a brief idea of what the message is. But there's other options available. It's all up to the individual team and users.
And just as it's important to make use of Git, it's also really important to make use of all other tools that you have available. So we use GitHub for our Git repository hosting. And so we also use GitHub Actions for CI and GitHub Issues for tracking tasks. So GitHub Issues are really powerful, or just any issue tracker. At the start of a project, what we do is we go through the development document that we've been given, and we distill the requirements down into individual issues for each feature. We then break that issue up into atomic bits and then write them down as checkboxes in the issue description. And then we label and assign them to each other so we all know what we're doing and when each bit needs to get done. Of course, issues are also really useful for tracking bugs. So when we get to the testing phase of a project, which is, of course, one of the lengthiest and most important phases, we usually receive a spreadsheet where each row is a different bug. And then we transfer those over to GitHub Issues and track them individually. Now, I used to do that manually, but it took ages. And this brings me to my next point, automate things. I created this thing called Issue Sheet. Now, what Issue Sheet does is it transfers bugs from a CSV file into GitHub. So I highly recommend doing this, writing tools that make your life easier and just remove the more tedious bits from your workflow. We've also got some in-game automation things for development. So we've got commands which dump items or leukocyte regions to JSON, which we can then use in configs. And we've also got some visualization things which allow us to iterate more quickly. One thing I will say is just be careful not to get caught in the automation trap, which is when you spend more time automating than you would have spent just doing the thing you're trying to do manually. I have been caught by this a couple of times.
Okay. So one thing when you're doing multiple events in a row, going over time, you will just end up building up your own like library of content you've created. And one thing that I find very useful is to just keep this old content whenever it's not an issue, whenever it's, not a problem to port or to cause issues with other features, to just leave them in, carry them along. Because honestly, when you're creating this kind of content, you never know when it might come in handy. You could be in the middle of a session for a video and you could decide, hey, that item from like 2 videos ago, that would be really, it would fit the theme right now. It would be really nice if somebody could use it. So when possible, it's always nice to just keep them around until they become too much of a problem to hold on to. However, one thing is making malleable content. You see, when you're making an item for your game or a feature or any kind of mechanic, it's always important to try and keep it and design it in a way where it can be used more in future. Sometimes when you design an item, it can be very specific. It can only be used one time because it's just so tied to the situation at hand. Such as when I made for a video, I think 2 videos ago, based on the published ones, we had to make these pedestals, which would allow you to craft an item by having all of the requisite ingredients. And when I did this for the first video, I just, made 4 different pedestal items, gave them each the model, and then just made it so if you right-click, craft that specific item, they just came pre-baked with an array of item stacks, and then you just had to match that in order to craft. It also uses the same pedestal model from Peculiar Pieces. However, this was essentially useless because if after that video was done, it was just you could never use that again. Like you're never going to want to make that same item with that same material. So after that video, I remade the entire system with a nice fancy UI. It has a lot of settings here, such as announcing in chat, having a little lightning effect, having it be single use, and having the price go up every time it's used. And once you place it down, you shift right click, you can put in any items into that GUI, and the entire recipe will just be completed. It takes like 5 seconds to create a custom recipe with a pedestal at any time. And we've been using that for the past 4 videos now. It's incredibly flexible, malleable. So when you are designing features, stuff like this is probably the ideal. Because then if ever you need something even similar to being able to, any item you need to make obtainable, takes 2 seconds to just slap one down, break it if you want to, place another one, change the recipe with shift click. It just takes no effort at all. And it opens the door for a lot of funny content. You can make your completely normal items for the event video that were planned, but it's also possible to make funny joke items. You could place down a recipe for a trident if it's relevant. Do you need an item to be added for the sake of the progression of the video or just to help a team? You can just place one down and change it. Very easy, takes like no effort at all. However, when you are carrying a lot of content around with you, there's going to be a lot of like messy leftover code. Things are going to get out of hand. You have to know when to just scrap things. As you go on in time, you're going to constantly, over time, you always discover new dependencies you can rely on, such as these over here. Some examples being player abilities lib, cardinal components, and stack API for, allowing players to fly, for example. Cardinal components for everything. If anyone here hasn't used it, you should look into it because it is incredibly valuable. And stack, which allows for any stack size over 64 and avoid you having to do a hellish amount of coding. So the biggest thing is when you do learn all these new mechanics, eventually you just have to decide, get rid of all the old code that is just completely garbage, rewrite any of the things that you really need. For example, if I need if we're updating and I'm getting rid of a load of old code, I'll probably be rewriting the pedestals. I don't think I'll be tossing them, even if the code is atrocious. I haven't looked at it in a while. Make use of these new skills and dependencies you find, because honestly, if you keep dragging forever, you will get completely tired and sick of what you're doing. It gets really painful. One good opportunity to do this is to wait until you hit a major update like 1.20 or in future 1.20.2 or so on, and then just use that as a reason to toss out all the old code that's probably all half broken anyway, and make a nice new selection of clean, using the new dependencies code.
Now, in my part of the events, I tend to be creating a new mod each time because I work on the more server-side section. So my approach to reusing code is a bit different. Old content isn't generally directly accessible, but the code of it is often still there and still built upon. For example, we had a lifesteal system in one event, so players would drop a heart on death, and that could be picked up by other players to increase their max health. And this worked so well that we wanted to use it in the next event with a couple of alterations. But of course, to do this, I had to untangle the lifesteal code from the previous event's code. And then after that, we wanted to use it in another event after that one. And so at that point, I decided to just move the lifesteal stuff into its own mod. And this is the mod icon for that mod, because, I mean, that's the mod icon for most of my mods. And now, when working on events, I tend to write every feature as its own self-contained module. So that would look something like this. There you go, little UML diagram. And I write everything as its own self-contained module so that the entire thing can just be copied out into the next event or even into a separate mod if necessary. It's just a simple Control-C, Control-V. Now, quite often when doing this, we need to make some kind of minor tweaks to some values or turn a part of a module on or off for balance, or maybe it just doesn't fit the video. And it's nice to not have to change the code at all for this. So I tend to add lots of game rules. That moves us on to what I consider to be the ultimate form of code reuse. Not modifying the code at all, but still changing the behavior. Behavior through configuration. So throughout every event, there are these different phases. Some phases would just be simple SMP-style survival, whereas the next phase might be an active event like a plague or an orc invasion. Since the phases differ quite a bit between the different events, but every event has this phase structure, I created a JSON-defined phase system. And with this, all it takes is for me to change a JSON file and then run a reload command, and I can change pretty much anything in the event structure. So what gives each phase its behavior is a list of things called, well, phase behaviors, because I'm unoriginal. There are a load of standard ones that I've made which do things like running commands, scattering players, or changing a load of game rules at once, or changing the world border in a specific world. It's also super easy for us to make new behaviors for each event just by implementing a couple of methods and writing a codec to create the behavior from JSON. But quite often we don't have to do that, because by composing our phases like this from behaviors, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of composition over inheritance in general, you should look into using more compositional patterns in your code. I know that Java tends to try and push us into a more kind of, we'll extend this and extend that, and now you've got 500 different classes. But making compositional patterns can really simplify your code, and it can make it so much nicer. But yeah, and it's paid off. For phases, we hardly ever have to write new code. We just build up the behaviors that we need from the more basic behaviors that we've already created.
So when you're running a player-based event, our events usually have around 100 or so people. The basically main thing you need to focus on is keeping players happy and enjoying it. However, you can't really do this without a set of rules. The issue is you can design rules, you can have a whole rule set for players to follow, but it can be almost too restrictive at times. Players can, if you have strict rules about using certain items in certain places and whatever else, these can get in the way of what could be cool moments or just fun gameplay mechanics. So I think the main takeaway for this is to just treat the rules more as a set of guidelines. They are good for following them when they make sense, because many events, many people just kind of take the rules, they follow it like a Bible, and then it just kind of gets in the way of things. I see this all the time, and just in general, I see it in the way many Discord servers are run. I see it in the way Minecraft events are run. It just can it can cause problems, which it could easily just be sidestepped by having everyone know the times when rules can be ignored and then let them by. Obviously, there's some rules that you would never let slip, stuff to do with hate or other harassment-y type things, but those you can just leave. This very solid. This idea is more for anything relating to game mechanics, where a lot of things are very situational. You got to remember that this is game design. Nothing is really set in stone. Sometimes the more fun, sometimes the less fun things are the ways to go, and everything is case by case. Especially when you're trying to make fun content, you have to be able to understand case by case situations. Otherwise, everyone will just feel kind of restricted in an unfun way. And the best content comes when players are able to have real fun. You can only fake so much. That's one thing I will say.
And finally, I'd like to say that I think the most important thing that we've both learned is that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. We wouldn't be able to do anything that we've done without building on so much of the awesome open source software that's out there. Huge thanks, especially to Gegi, Patbox, and the rest of the Nucleoid team. Your software is phenomenal. And we do, of course, give back whenever we can. We've made pull requests to Nucleoid's player roles and more codecs, Fabric's Fabric installer, Quilt standard libraries, and other projects based on code that we've needed for events. So once again, thank you.
Okay, well, now if you have any questions, just a reminder for anyone who's not sure, you just take a written book from the front. If you want it to be anonymous, you just drop it in once it's written. If you want your name to be attached, just sign the book and it'll show up. And also, can somebody show me how to actually access the questions? Tablet. I'm gonna assume it's this one. Oh,
Hate it when there's goo.
um,
How does the questions thing work?
any coming in? Seems to be old ones from the previous. I guess I'll just go Rabbit 2. Okay,
Rabbit 2.
nice. Okay, here we go. How are you able to maintain a good server performance on a server with hundreds of players? Well, that's a bit of a challenge. Usually, the servers do experience a good bit of lag. We do remove certain vanilla features. For example, a lot of the time, random tick speed is turned down or off at times just because it is a major TPS drain, and
Villager
we'd rather
AI
for
as well.
oh Jesus, villager AI is
Yeah.
probably one of the worst things, especially when players start making villager farms and stuff. Any mob of brains just kind of bogs down the server. So stuff like that we tend to disable either with game rules or just entirely. With yeah, obviously with random tick speed, we turn it off for a while. We still have other ways, like some events have had people with the ability to grow crops with an ability. So you didn't need the random ticks to grow crops. So usually there is some game mechanics which are kind of taken away or like reduced in order to help with performance. We might try to look into other things in future which might be handy, or just to
Yeah,
mitigate the symptoms.
we tend
But
to run a lot of Spark profilers
yeah,
every event. We're taking loads of profiling. Uh,
okay,
yeah, and of course we use a lot of I suppose off the shelf optimization mods. C2ME is a big help. I know it's technically
yeah,
unstable, but we've had few problems with it. It's worked
yeah,
fine in the majority of cases, and that is
for
really
the
helpful
most
when you've
part,
got a
yeah.
lot of people spread around the world.
So here's a new one.
Of course, uh,
Oh,
Krypton, Lithium,
oh yeah, like
Starlight
lithium,
as well
sodium,
is
all
very good.
that, starlight, like
So yeah,
basically all the known optimization mods. So why not start off making separate mods instead of
oh hang on, my
modules?
audio's
That's
broken.
more for you. Oh, well, that's more of a question for Will, because I am going to start using modules more so, because it does seem like it would be a better design. For example, in the main mod that has all of those different weapons and stuff, the issue with having them just, the normal layer, blocks, items, whatever, is that over time, when you keep adding to the mod just grows and grows. And then your items folder is huge, your blocks folder is huge, your entities folder is huge. So even just as an organizational thing, it will be nice to. I'm probably going to start doing each video has its own folder and then its own initializer and everything, just because the growth from a mod like that just gets very out of hand pretty quickly. Is your audio working? Did you say something? I didn't. Did anyone else? I didn't hear anything. Yeah.
You know, one day Linux will have audio that works. This is not that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to answer this one as well?
Um, yeah, sure. So I would really like to create everything as a separate mod. The issue is A, where do you draw the line? Because as it is, we do run lots of separate mods per event. We have generally a content mod, a server content mod, our base content mod, and our base server content mod that is shared between all events. A couple things like the lifesteal mod and also another separate shared content mod.
Yeah, there's
There
quite a
is
few
a
different
reason
mods
for all of
that
this separation.
we make.
Yeah,
There's a lot of different aspects, and that's all just the mods we make, not including stuff like create, which is in half the events, and other
yeah.
random mods like well, I'm not sure the name
But
of that one. Anyway,
yeah. So
yeah, next.
the difficulty is A, drawing the line in what goes in what mod, and B, it's Gradle and IntelliJ
Oh no!
because it will take ages to index every new project and switching between
Every time you
projects. It just
open each
adds
one.
Yeah, everything is a bit of a pain when you've got too many projects. So
Yeah.
for that reason, we
All
had to
right.
keep it to a minimum.
So, how much moderation staff do the events require? So, we, as the developers, we are able to show up and be staff, but we're not required to. But from what I've seen, it's usually there's one or two like event staff, who have operator stats and all that, who are online at any given moment, like scheduled, and the rest of them just kind of come and go when they're not scheduled. So I'd say like during the whole thing, usually 2 to 3 very active staff members kind of go around, teleport to random players, keep an eye on things, try to encourage cool interactions and all that. And usually it runs all right. I don't think we usually have many like troublemakers or anything. People
No,
usually
no,
just
not usually.
join and play the game. Rarely is it that staff have to get involved. And like, yeah, people don't. I was gonna try and think of a situation, but no, people really don't tend to cause many problems for the most part.
No, I
And
think
the worst we've had, I think, is a few people using X-ray and stuff, and some people being just
yeah,
bad sports.
and there was that guy who kept on trying to join our server whenever we were testing anything. But I mean, we have
Yeah,
whitelist on, so good luck.
yeah. Like, yeah, not too much event. I think big thing is though, it'll depend on the event host. Like depends on what your community is like. Some event, and also another thing, sure. But one thing that a lot of that helps this is a lot with moderation is the fact that for the most part, people have to like submit an application to join the event, and that's usually how they get in. Either they've been in a previous event and they were decent, or they stand out during one of the more open test events, like being invited by another person who's allowed in, or they're like submitting a video application. So it's a lot higher value. And if you have no whitelist, it usually gets a lot more. You'll probably need more staff just to keep an eye on things because people can't just join with an alt account
Yeah,
and start causing trouble.
no, I can't imagine how awful it would be if we didn't whitelist it.
Yeah. All right. So next, are the mods for events all closed source? Well, for the most part, the content mods and most of the libraries are. For the server side mods, it's kind of like an extra level because there's code that's only on the server that the client needs to function, which is in a separate mod. So you can't even get access to that even if you are in the event. But there is also aspects which are more open source. Like we do develop into like for me at least, have one of my own libraries which I maintain. I'm going to overhaul soon, which I use for the coding of these events. And I do make changes to that based on what is needed for events sometimes. So that aspect will be open. For the most part, it's closed source just because people people are weird about it. There's been people uploading remakes of the content to CurseWord and all that. It's like,
Yeah,
no, they
it's
literally like rip the assets from the jar files of the event and use our assets on worse code. It's very cringe. Let's see.
it is. But yeah, we do obviously, as I've said, we give back as much as we can. And in a few
Yeah,
events, we modify already open source mods, and for a lot of those mods, we keep the source available. We're
yeah. It's
Silvercoms on GitHub.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
but
when
yeah,
it's other mods we do pull requests. I think that counts as another bit of open source. But
yeah,
do you
of
have an
course.
example of when the rules didn't prioritize fun content? The rules didn't prioritize fun content. Um, hmm. See, that's the issue. Coming up with a situation on the spot is really hard. But I do know there has been a
It is.
situation too. Because like,
Yeah, because
hmm,
I mean there have been moments where it's been like, oh, if this person were to stumble upon this, that'd be good.
there is some
Um,
things like, for example, stuff like in general rules like friendly fire, obviously. usually friendly fire is enabled, but it's like don't go murdering your own team. But then there's been times when people have just decided, hey, here's a duel that's going to happen. I think that's happened like
Yeah,
three
that's
times
a good
now,
example. Yeah.
and like you know, friendly fire is on for a reason. It kind of spices things up, but also and prevents projectile spam. But situations like that are usually what we mean when we say encouraging it, because that is a rule. Don't go killing your teammates, but it's broken fairly a few times just when it makes sense. When somebody randomly wants to kill people, no. But when people want to do it in like a lore plot way, which kind of encourages the plot of the event, then that's usually one time it'll go through. That makes Woo, yeah, Amy, well, that's what I'm talking about. Woo, Talon. Thanks, Talon.
Thank you, Talon.
Woo.
Woo, Talon.
I was running the famous Windsweep Cowboy event. It was good, so it was very silly. Let's see. What was your favorite videos to work on? So I think I'll go
Oh,
first on that.
be careful, because some of them haven't been released yet. I know that
Oh
my
no,
favorite
mine
has
is a
not been
public one,
released.
so it's fine.
All right.
I think I don't know if I can show the slides again. Oh, I think I can. 1 second. If I go back to the videos, is it one of them? Let's see. It is. So this one in the middle, on the middle bottom, the Zombie Island one, I think that was by far my favorite one because
Oh yeah, that was good.
it had basically a key component in making that really fun was the fact that there was like a respawn mechanic in the game. So like, there was like a fancy dripstone, it dripped into a cauldron, it gave you an antidote, you could throw a zombie and a teammate would be revived as that zombie. And I feel like that probably was one of the most interesting videos out of all of them because the fact that you can bring players back, if you use a name tag on a zombie, it'll always bring back the player whose name that is if they're on your team. Oh no, I think it's on any team as long as they're dead. So I think that one was by far my favorite just because of that, because it was just so cool seeing how players use that mechanic. People would steal the dripstone and all sorts of shenanigans, I guess, and people respawning their friend, running away with dripstone, getting a bit of antidote, getting their friend and running away. Like stuff like that was just incredibly engaging to me. That was exactly what I wanted to happen when I designed and helped design the system and coded it all. Do you have one of the like public ones that you'd say?
You know, I'd forgotten all about that revival system in the Zombie Island thing. I think either that or I did like making the catapults in the medieval civilization one.
Yeah, those
We
are
had
very.
these catapults that people could drag around and then lob rocks at people.
It made
Um,
very cool visuals of just loads of rocks soaring through the air.
yeah. And then the more recent ones, um, these Purge and Battle Royale ones, we moved towards, instead of scattering the players around at the start, everyone was concentrated at the start. I quite enjoyed uh, working on that because in every test we just got to see all of these players just sprinting towards the center, trying to get all of the loot,
That's like Minecraft
or
Hunger
some of
Games, I
them
think.
running away for their lives.
Yeah. Sure. Talon. Talon was very funny in that one. He isn't the main video, but
Yes.
check out Talon's version of it from their perspective. Also, an honorable mention to the Purge one, where I just think the custom weapons for that video were really good. And I feel like the fact that there was multiple, you had like a whole team that was like, each one of them had the sickles, which I think was a really cool visual.
Yes, you did a great job on those weapons. Amy does all of
Thank you.
the custom weapon work, and it's just so cool.
Okay, now I think
It's gone black. Oh, there we go.
how do you manage testing of your products? Do you do it by yourself, or do you have a set of members in your team who go in with fresh you? So I don't think we currently have a set tester. I don't think we used to though. Where
Yeah.
one of one of the people we knew who played in some of the events would go through the mod, play test it as much as they could, and write out the spreadsheet for us. I don't know how it's working at the moment, but I know another member of the team does go through the mod, looks for bugs, and still does it. There's plenty of testing, and also, oh yeah, thanks Talon for the reminder. There's um there's test. We do a test run of each event, or two or three sometimes before the actual main event, just to get like a feel for the mods, a general playtest. Usually we just respawn players. We don't have like 100 or 400 players, which itself usually leads to more problems we miss. But we usually get enough players, we respawn them, keep it going. These events usually
Yeah.
go up to
I
like
think we tend to have
4 to 5 days,
30 to
but we
40
reduce it to one.
testers, don't we?
Yeah. So it's like a very short version of it, which kind of misses a lot of problems, but better than doing nothing with multiple players. Like playtesting with real players is probably one of the most important things to do in terms of any kind of testing. Okay, how did you get into creating mods for this event? Well, for me, Will needed another person to help test and help code it, and came to me and asked me if I wanted to, and I said yes. You probably have a more interesting answer.
Um, I don't remember.
I mean, it was like, was it years
It was
ago at
quite
this
a while
point?
ago. I think
Jeez.
it was probably MMD requests channel.
True. That's usually
Yeah,
where that's
I
where I
think, yeah.
started with doing
I know
mod,
at the time there was
like
a lot
paid
of
mods.
activity in there. I don't know. I don't know what that's
Yeah,
like these days. I haven't been in there in a while.
neither do I. Yeah, like that's where I started with doing paid requests. I just went in there, looked at anything that seemed interesting, and just did it for like usually a pittance. I did one mod for like $6, and it became one of my most downloaded mods.
Yeah, and now this is a
Um,
big step up from that.
yeah,
It was,
let me.
yeah, I think this is definitely one of the best, the best modding job we've got so far.
Yeah, I think so. Admittedly, I missed a bit of this talk, so this might have already been discussed. But how do you handle brainstorming ideas, multiplayer events, and deciding if they work or not? So we don't usually start with we're after the basic ideas for it have been decided. It's like I think it's like Speed Silver himself and a few other members of the team do the basic decision making and ideas for these events. But then once they write out a design document and it gets to us, we're able to go through the design document and give our feedback from like whatever, like as a coding perspective and a game design perspective on things that need changing. And there's often been many things that have been changed. Like I don't think, like yeah, it's a good system, I think, because there's many things that we end up saying, this seems weird, this seems very weird, and then we tweak it a bit, make it more
It,
balanced, fun, entertaining, what have you.
it's usually her. I don't have a very good eye for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I read over like the whole thing like 3 times just because I enjoy that kind of thing. Let's see. Do you think Fire Blanket code might be used to look at for performance in your event? Maybe. I haven't really been paying full attention. I know it's what's making us able to walk at somewhat decent speed in this event, like the BlanketCon. So I'll probably, if that's like a open source thing, might be worth looking into. It would be very nice if we could get more. Oh, nice. It'd be nice to get
Yeah,
more
totally.
performance in the other events without having to reduce things like random kick speed. I think Villager AI is staying gone though. That's awful.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Okay. What big hosting server should I? Well, I don't know where our server box comes from.
Yeah, we've just got a VPS somewhere,
Yeah, we just kind of
and
got handed
we
one
just
and login
manage the
details,
servers
and
on there. Yeah. Although that said,
DHS Capital Hosting is what's running BlanketCon,
yes,
but
Capital Hosting sponsor BlanketCon, so I assume that you can get maybe they have a code.
they must
I
have
don't
a
know.
pretty big server to run this. But like,
Yeah.
I guess there's also, you could use Will's Nodecraft code, or you can use my
Yes.
Bloom code on our mod pages. That's
So you've got plenty of choice.
you've got plenty of choices. I'd probably recommend one of those three. I'm not going to say which ones I wouldn't recommend because that'd probably be rude to a very big public event.
Just look at the hosts that we haven't mentioned and don't use them.
Yeah, exactly. Choose from one of those three. Uh, oh, the game is lagging, I think.
Uh-oh. Oh, there we go.
Oh. Can you recommend any tools to maintain code in larger projects? I'm 1 year into modding and I don't use anything like linters. Yeah, I feel like my code quality needs some improvement.
Can I say this one? Because
Yeah,
I
I
do just
don't
want
have
to
much of an
say
answer.
check style is useful in theory. We don't use it for the simple reason that it really slows you down. I've considered adding it, but I've spent so long just fixing things that only check style cares about on Fabric API and quilt standard libraries pull requests. And I don't want to bring that into our projects. But no, I mean we have a .editor config file, so our settings are standardized.
Yeah,
And so we don't have like inconsistent indentation or anything like that. And beyond that, you
I
don't
got.
really need that much, I don't think, if you're careful
Yeah,
and if everyone involved has a consistent view on what good style looks like and everyone involved cares, then it's
yeah.
fine.
I think the
But
biggest
I
thing
mean,
is
for
practice.
like big open source software projects, there's a completely different answer. For a lot of
Yeah,
them, check style is probably a good idea. But yeah, for us, it's just
yeah.
two of us writing code and we both know what nice code looks like. So
I will say though, code just kind of.
it's easier to
It's
get
not that
away
it
with
decays.
no linters or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think it decays. It's more that you're going to constantly improve as you practice, and no matter what you do, your old code is going to look horrific in like a few days, a few months, a few weeks. You just gotta keep going through, tossing out the old stuff, getting new stuff repeatedly. Yeah, it has happened to me over days. I like Amorite is a mod on this server, and I wrote a big chunk of code right before I fully learned what cardinal components are, and then immediately it looked terrible, and I wanted to go back, and then I did. The version on the server now is the rewrite using cardinal components, got fancier particle effects, as you can see, and like, yeah, sometimes it can literally look like garbage over a day. What's one thing that you made that worked out better or completely differently from what you expected during a player event? Hmm. Yeah. I think honestly, a lot of the events we've done, I think at this point I'm very surprised how well the first event went because that was like we hadn't really done a massive player event before, and that one went I think really well.
That's
I think it's
true.
one of the better ones. And like I think most of the events go better. Don't I think of like one or two events that went worse than was expected. I think the rest of them have done better. Like, yeah, I think
Yeah, I think
most. It's
pretty
a bit of a
much.
boring answer, but
Yeah, sorry.
yeah. Sorry, Talon. Okay. Most of
Ooh,
Silver
big one.
videos I've seen seem to have a narrative behind them. Example, the anti-cure scientist. How does this desire to have for a narrative factor into development? Do you just let players come up with a narrative on their own without pushing them one way or another? Okay,
Very,
so
very good question. Whoever
that
you
is
are.
a really good question. So none of them are explicitly like scripted. Like say for there's like the two eras of the multiplayer events. I guess it's like the new Battle Royale ones and the previous Civilization ones. In the Civilization ones, there was like a set structure of the phases that you go through. If you see any of the videos, it'll be pretty obvious on the sidebar at all times. Those phases are completely obviously scripted. We had to code them on after all. But say, for example, the anti-cure stuff, that completely came out of nowhere. That was completely natural. Like, they came up with that on their own. And I think we or the staff or whatever, did probably help a little bit to like keep it going, to let it happen. Like I think, for example, when he revives when they're running away with the dripstone and he revives his teammate, one of us gave him the name tag to be able to do that, because otherwise they just couldn't respawn that specific player and it would have been lame. So like once a plotline makes itself up, exists, then we can try and encourage it, help it out to keep going instead of just ending kind of anticlimactically. But for the most part, they kind of just happen on their own. Like sometimes it doesn't even need our help. Like there was like was it during I think it was during the Jurassic one. There was like a whole underground fight club that was just made. They had like a duel for who was like the leader of the group, and then they were invaded, and like, all this other stuff just kind of happens, and we didn't even know half of it was happening until it did. Yeah, exactly. Like Town said, basically exactly the case. Letting things happen naturally basically always makes for a better story video. It's like I said during the breaking the rules slide, is that player enjoyment is what matters the most. Players who are enjoying themselves will make better plot lines, better stories, have a better time. And like if you try and constantly constrict, say, oh no, you can't do that, blah blah blah, it kind of just it makes it feel super rigid. And then players just don't enjoy themselves, they get less enthusiastic, they stop trying new things. The whole thing kind of crashes if you're too restrictive and rigid. So letting things happen naturally is the best way. Do you have any comment on it?
No, I think you hit all the points there. Totally agree.
All right. Um, what code editor ID are we using? IntelliJ.
IntelliJ.
I use the Minecraft development plugin. I don't know if you do.
I do, yeah. It's really
Yeah,
useful,
I think that's probably the
especially for
most important one.
mix-ins.
Yeah, Jesus. Like, use the Minecraft development plugin. That's by far the most important one. Use IntelliJ, use the Minecraft development plugin. Use stuff like Quiltflower, or I guess it's called Vineflower now. Look into that.
Vineflower now, yeah.
I'm not going to give a tutorial, but look into Vineflower. It makes things a little bit easier. Let's see. How do you get started making mods for content creators? So I'll go first, but like I went into the MMD channel, like we mentioned before, the Minecraft mod development server request channel. A few smaller YouTubers would go there. I've done like a few little mods for those, and they've been made into videos or shorts or both, and gone along. I did work for CJ these days at one point, like Mr. Beast's brother, and that was because I was recommended to him by Vasky. So like being a part of the community and active and people knowing you helps a lot. Like once people know who you are, you could get recommended. Like if it wasn't for me doing things actively in the MMD channel, then I wouldn't have gotten this position. Like being an active member of the community, I think is the best way to find content creators who would like your work, because even if they don't come to you, they might come to somebody who knows you, who might then recommend you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was also just making little mods from requests in the MMD request channel. One thing I will say is that I massively undervalued myself at first. I think everyone does this. Don't do this.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't make things for like
I would not make a
$15 or
mod for
whatever.
$6 now.
Yeah, your time is worth more than that.
Yeah. All right. People like your mod content so much. Why don't you release it? Legal issues? Well, well, I guess you could say legal issues because it's the decision of the Speed Silver and his team. If it's released, we don't decide that. But I think honestly, like obviously we can't do it legally, but even then, none of these mods are like able to work. Like if I gave you the mod that had some Midas sword and all those other weapons, you wouldn't even be able to craft them because they were all crafted with pedestals, which are an admin has to place down. None of these mods are designed for playing with, except for in an event. I think most event mods are like this, where like you can have an event that's based on not balanced with typical playthrough. You can have events that are based on public mods, but if you have custom mods, typically those custom mods are just only good for the event. They're not good in any other situation. They might have weird mix-ins. They might have all sorts of things that just you don't want to play with, and we just don't want to maintain them. Like we don't want to have to maintain the sword that gains sharpness when you kill people. We're done with it. It's over. It's in the pile. If we're paid to do it again, sure, but like we're not going back to that because why would we? There's like there's so many better mods out there that are actually fun to play with. So go do those. If you press the green, it'll show that question. The like smiley face next to a question.
I can't work this. I'm an old person. I can't work
Okay,
out this
I'll
phone.
you just leave that and I'll work it. You can look at it if you want to see the upcoming questions, but I'll press the buttons on it. And do you sometimes wish to participate in those events as players without knowing the narrative and be spoiler free? Or are you fine always doing the hard work in the background? Reminder to stay hydrated. Okay, after I answer this I'll have a drink. But I think for some events, definitely. But from a blind perspective, I guess. I mean, for these events, it's hard to say because having the perspective is what makes me enjoy watching people play them. The things I made. But I guess if it was other people's events, yeah, I'd enjoy playing events if they were to a similar degree of these ones, especially if it was like the Civilization ones, because I enjoyed those ones gameplay mechanic wise. So yeah, I guess the answer is yes, but I'm not like crazy enthusiastic for it or anything. I think it's more just like, yeah, it'd be fun. If I was given the opportunity, I would. I played on something recently, but like I'm not insane for. I kind of enjoy just watching people using things I made, which is kind of the reason I'm here, because like a bunch of the mods I worked on or made are here, and it's really nice when I get to see people in the crowd and just wandering around using items from my mods. Like I see one person over there with double jump boots, so shout outs to you. You want to answer as well?
Um, well, my answer's a bit more boring, which is no, not really. Not because of the events, just because I don't play much Minecraft, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't be good in the events just because I wouldn't make very good content.
yeah. I mean that's fair. Let's see. What do you think is the most important factor to making an event / mod fun to play? Honestly, just kind of good game design. Like I feel like the best events are the ones, like I said, that have really interesting game design, like the zombie event. I think when you have an interesting mechanic or something to tie everything together, that really boosts the funness of an event. Because like, I'll be real, vanilla Minecraft, it can be fun, but for an event, you kind of need something more. You need a mod that kind of changes your perspective, a mod that makes things mix it up. It's like you can have a theme in a few players, but it will usually go well. But I think when you add a mod with something to aim for, to strive for, to change the main gameplay, it changes a lot. Even in the new events, those are very vanilla focused. But those 4 items in the middle of the map, they kind of do change it. There's the end goal isn't beating the dragon, getting an elytra or whatever. The end goal, like people can have a elytra and they can just lose because somebody else just shot them with the fancy bow. I feel like those kind of items and stuff can change it, and all the mod stuff can change it. You know what I'm saying?
Um, No, I think you hit everything there.
Yeah. All right. Are you doing modding as a full-time job? No, I'm a college student first and
Yeah,
foremost,
we're
and
both.
modding is like a college job for me
Yeah,
and a
same
hobby.
here.
Yeah. What is your favorite tier? Well, I'll let you go first.
How can you judge a tater to be greater than any other? A tater that's greater is an illusion. All taters, be they tiny, be they great, be they absolutely humongous 500 blocks large, or a 1 pixel cuboid that you have to squint and zoom in and set your FOV to 30 to see, they are all tater, and that
You
is what matters.
think that's the true answer. I won't comment any further than that. How do you select who gets playing events as an application plugin? So I mentioned before there was. I will add that like there was definitely some YouTubers who are invited, like personally by like Speed Silver. I know there was like Wisp in one of the videos and a few others that I can't think of. But like, yeah, there's definitely a few who asked specifically. I know Talon MC over there was asked personally to join one of them. Go, yeah. Oh my god. So yeah, some YouTubers and that are asked specifically to join, but for the most part, people submit video submissions or they were in previous events. I mentioned that a bit more in depth earlier, but yeah, YouTubers and other notable people are sometimes asked specifically. Um, what's the largest scale event in terms of players that you see yourself hoping in the next few years? To put it simply, unless we can do a big thing about performance, I think 100 is the limit for modded events. Like you do see like 200, 300, whatever events on YouTube. Those are usually on paper servers or like special fancy servers that can like shard players or whatever else, weird stuff like that. For actual like fabric modding or any other kind of modded server, 100 is, it feels like a pretty hard limit. I mean, I guess this server has a cap of 300. I think was that like almost 200 at one point. And you never know if we implement some fire blanket type things, 210. Yeah, so like if we implement some of the optimizations from this, I think we could probably hit that. I think
Yeah,
as with this
I mean
server, I think
the
300
problem
is
is,
the
of
hard
course,
cap.
we've got to handle people actually playing, and they're going around
And that's
breaking a lot of
another
blocks
thing.
and interacting with
Yeah,
things
that's one
as
thing
they
this
would
server doesn't
just
have to
playing the
deal with.
game. Yeah.
Like adventure mode players are a lot easier to manage. But so I'd say 200 would probably be a hard cap with performance wise and also gameplay wise, because I feel like eventually things kind of fall off when like the video making process gets a bit complicated when you have so many people. Like at the moment, we actually do tend to have like 200 or more players, we will, with the 100-player events, and that's usually that in order to keep the gameplay interesting, more people can sign up, and then the player cap is at 100. But as people die off, and they're like, since it's hardcore, you're banned from the server when you die, more people join, take their place. So like, we usually do get around somewhere between 100 and 200 players per event at this point because of the permadeath. So I'd say the absolute largest would be 200, 200 total at once. And yeah, questions are closed now for the moment.
Yeah, because
Or should we do like a
we've gone just over our limit. I mean, there's
yeah?
nothing scheduled for an hour, so we can finish the queue, but yeah, probably best not to take any more.
Where can I find the secret Amy and Will plushies? Nowhere yet. Maybe
Yet.
someday. Yes, maybe. Can I get a 500 block tall pair? be what you want to make the change in the world. You know, be the change you want to make in the world. That's the quote. You should go and make it. That's what I'm gonna say. Can you repeat the one thing? The one thing.
All right, let's go back to the start. We're
Oh
redoing the
god,
whole
let's start over the
presentation.
entire thing. As someone who has never really done anything pertaining to commissions in general, how would you go about putting a reasonable price on the mod commission? I think that kind of is just something you gain a value for. I'm not really
Yeah,
because
just
like
don't let yourself work below minimum wage, basically. If you're putting however many hours in, don't charge
that's like a
less than.
minimum. I
Yeah,
would also say that if you're like, I guess this is kind of a bit of a full of self thing to say, but like I wouldn't personally go lower than whatever I'm able to get. Like that's it. That's a really weird wording. Let's say if I'm being paid, if I'm able to be paid 25 by somebody, I'm not going to ever accept 20 because
that's
why
fair.
would I
Yeah,
when I can go for the other one with 25 and like just keep put your price up because as you go on, you're getting more skilled, you're making things quicker, there are less bugs, whatever else, higher scope, higher fancy effects, like you get better over time. So don't go down. That's my main thing. Don't drop yourself, drop your value because there is no value you're dropping. You're getting better. Your price should only go up. Let's see. My personalish question, my younger brother really likes the content creator who basically does content exactly like this, Socks for One. Have you worked with them or know anyone who did? Would be a fun call.
I know I have. About maybe about a year and a half ago, I did. I think
Let
it
me
was
just try and.
craftable
I
hacks or
think
something like
I.
that.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning that. I think I. I don't think I did. I think I worked with some similar one. Actually, no, I think I did one. I don't remember what it was. Let's see. Let me just look on the channel real quick. Okay, I think I might have done one of their videos. I won't check right now, but I think you see, I don't know if it's just the same video done by multiple creators or whatever, but I do remember doing a one where you can eat a lot of different things in the game. So if any, then that would be the one, but I'm not sure. I it might have been somebody else. Sorry. Um, that doesn't seem to be. I think there was a question there a second ago. Is there a question?
Is it gone? Did we break it?
Um, I think I'll put on the questions for a second. Anyone, just because we didn't give a bit of a warning, so if anyone
All
has
right,
any that
sure,
they already did, then just drop it
sure.
in now, and then we're immediately putting it back off. So last chance.
Put something funny in there.
Yeah, that too. This lover. So if anyone has a last chance, don't do too many, but like no more after this. Okay, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
sure.
can do one. I'll just read it out from chat. Curious how you are handling mod pack distribution to players. Well, I'll just give a bit of context for the past. In the past, we literally just gave a zip file that had all the jars and configs. But now, I don't know if we're able to talk about that, are we?
Um, we're working on something.
Yeah.
We're working on an installer.
Yeah. So it'll be a lot it's going to be a proprietary thing, so like it won't be public or anything, but I don't think so anyway. But
Yeah.
it'll be a fancy way of installing, essentially just similar to what the this mod pack had when we were developing booths, where it just automatically updates mods, so we don't have to send everyone a new mod zip or send everyone a single thing. I don't think it's a replacement. I think doesn't it use that unsub?
So we have two variants currently.
Oh, okay.
One uses one strategy, one uses a different strategy.
Yeah,
That's all I'm gonna say.
yeah. We won't say anymore. Okay, is anyone else looking to submit a question, or should I put it off now? Last chance. Speak now, forever hold your peace. See somebody writing one? I'll wait for you and nobody else because I don't see anyone. And we can take another one in the meantime. Go make me a good 500 block tall tater? No. Something funny. Talon MC. Ha 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 ha. Very funny, Talon.
Thank you,
Whoa.
Talon.
I love that one. Oh. Opinion on chibi tater. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's just a small tater. It's not an AMI, so I don't know what it is. Okay, Bazinga.
Bazinga.
Did Madeline Celeste teach you
Bazinga.
how to double jump? Well, the answer is no. Madeline Celeste taught Moya Shine how to double jump, and then he made enchantment. So here we are.
Also, Madeline Celeste can't double jump. She dashes.
Oh yeah, it's a dash. Yeah, never mind. And then Moya Shine made enchantment, so we can dash now. Let me see. I don't see anyone else writing questions, so I am now going to close it for good. No more after this. I object this wedding. Okay. Any announcements on future events? I don't
Not
know.
from us.
Follow Silver on Twitter, maybe. I don't know where he relays this information, but not from us. Bites you. Okay.
Nom.
Wow wow. Wow 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 wow.
Wawa? Like Toki Pona?
Best pony. Will you answer that one?
Rarity.
Based on your experience, who would win it between IMS and Tool in a fight to the death on stage? I feel like the only way to find out is to make that happen. So this is a call out for both of you, for each other.
True. The true winner is
Do it
us
at some
because we
point.
get to see it.
So true.
Okay, I think that should be it. People are still throwing questions and other things onto it.
Do we open it for like
But
1 second?
I mean,
We have now gone 10 minutes over.
yeah, I mean, there's
But-
nothing for another 50 minutes, but I mean, I guess you can put it on. I'll wait for sure. Oh,
Okay, closed
Rabbit
again. Did we
2.
get anything?
Yeah, we got Rabbit 2. That was opening as we closing as we opened, sure. We got favorite anime series or manga. Do you have any?
No, sorry.
I've watched
I
barely
quite
any.
enjoyed
I don't know.
JoJo's when I watched that.
Oh, true.
But that was quite a
I'd
while
say
ago.
I'll say the same because I haven't seen much else. Gay, homosexual, gay. True. What are some of the hardest projects you can share? Hardest? I'm not sure. Like, I think in general, nothing is like that difficult. I think the main thing that decides how hard a project is usually just like how burnt out I am at it. Like, other than that, usually most things are completely manageable, given enough time and mental health.
True.
Like, I don't think any of them are specifically hard. Maybe I'll leave it vague and say probably the one I'm doing at the moment because it is taking place while I'm on holiday and during BlanketCon. and other things. So, I'm at a busy time, and that's probably the only reason it's hard. So I think that is all.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone once again. I'll go flip the fireworks lever.
The lever was a button. There we go.